Hello there. Welcome to another episode of Jeddah Workshop. This video is going to be a little bit different in that, firstly, I'm going to show you how to make this helmet, the Sith Trooper Helmet. But the reason it's going to be different is because basically everything that could go wrong did go wrong. The print itself, the painting, the video, like I lost all the footage. Was just a complete and utter disaster, basically. But I'm going to try my best to show how I made it, and the steps that I took. But yeah, I just wanted to forewarn you that this is like the worst video in the entire world. So enjoy! Okay, before we get into this video, I just want to make a comment on this. I saw some promotional images before the movie Rise of Skywalker came out and saw the Sith Troopers and thought, they look cool. What's a Sith Trooper? That makes no sense whatsoever, but anyway, they look pretty cool. And then I went and saw the movie with my 5-year-old nephew, and you don't really see them. So I'm just going to show the all the scenes out of the movie where you do see a Sith Trooper in their entirety. It's going to take about 5 seconds. You ready? Here we go. That's not one, but that is a cool helmet. So there you go, there's a couple in the background here. And then it jumps right to the end of the film with a big fight on the Star Destroyer, and that's one of the only close-ups. Some dudes get blown up in the background there. A couple of flyover shots. Oh look, Sith Jet Trooper for 1-2 seconds, and then they're all dead. That's it. That is how much you see Sith Troopers in this movie. It's coming up to the final scene. You see that guy in the background, dead on the floor. That's it. They're done. Yeah, it's not the best, is it? Let's be honest here. But I really like the production design, and I really like the Sith Troopers because they're made by proper fans. You know, the people that work on these movies. What I'm saying is the people that work on them are fans of the original movies, so they evolve everything about it that they love. So that is what I find endearing about the Sith Trooper. Anyway, let's jump into how I actually made this. Alright, so you set up your print, the other pieces of your model in the same way, and this is mine printing one of the main helmet side bits. I'm just zooming in here to see my massive error. I didn't add supports on the edge here. I didn't think it would need it. It does, because you can see those annoying stringy bits. I'm just going to have to cut those off later. So I'll learn that for next time. And this is just showing that, you know, that top overhang there had a massive gap, but because it's at such an angle, you know, it's like 45 degrees, it can print it, no problem. So there you go. That's been printing for 20 hours for this one piece. Okay, so once you have all your pieces printed, what you want to do is sand the edges in preparation for gluing. Then what you want to do is add a little dab of glue. I use Gorilla Glue, sort of every 10 mil, every inch or so. Line them up properly, and then I go along the seam with a soldering iron to sort of weld the pieces together. This is one of the first things that went wrong. Annoyingly, I had a line shift or a warped print. One of these side pieces lifted away from the build plate, so I pushed it back down with a bit of glue tack, but it already started printing, you know, in compensation to that shift. So when I finished the pieces, there was a massive gap. It was just completely wrong. There was a sort of a 5mm gap, even though everywhere else was lined up. At the back here, it was horrible. So what I did is I used filament to sort of go in and melt it with the soldering iron there to sort of fill in these pieces. I know it looks like absolute crap, but you should have seen it before. I didn't get footage of it because it was so bad, but this is, I literally went along these grooves with a soldering iron and filament to fill it all in. So at the bottom of a 3D print where the supports is, it's always going to be a bit rougher than everywhere else. It's just the nature of 3D printing. So this is totally normal. So all these bits are going to need filling in, but they also have sort of loose bits of, you know, sort of stringy filament. So what I do is I know I look quite brutal here, but I am being careful. Just go over it with a file and get rid of all those loose bits. Okay, this is mistake number 2. Even though I lined up all the pieces that I thought properly, there was this big lip here, which is going to look terrible and be impossible to get right with any sort of filling. So what I did is I just used a blade to, trying to cut and hold a camera and hold a helmet at the same time is quite hard. So I was like, I'm just going to redo it. So I cut the glue, took it apart, re-glued it, re-soldered it, and there we go. Much better line now. So here you can see where how that line shift affected it. There's like a diagonal line going across the horizontal grooves, which just caused that huge gap. It looks really bad, but I've rescued it as much as possible just to help myself later with how I'm going to fill it, and you know, having massive holes in there is not good. So yeah, I just filled it with spare filament, almost like you would with, you know, with a soldering iron, just going along and melting it into the gap there, and then going across the grooves to sort of shape it to be how it's meant to be. Yeah. Okay, once you have your helmet all pieced together, you'll want to use something called filler primer. Make sure you don't just use normal, you know, filler spray paint. Filler primer or primer filler is a lot thicker, and it's going to really help to give a base layer to just start filling in those printer lines. So go over the whole helmet with like 1 or 2 coats, and that gives you a good base to start doing the proper filling. So this is Spato Rapid Stopper, or it's also called Spot and Glazing Putty. It's got the consistency of toothpaste, but it dries really hard, and it's great for sanding. For some reason I lost the footage of me doing it for this actual helmet, so I'm just going to show you me doing another helmet of how I do it. Feel free to wear actual, you know, rubber gloves for this. I'm a cheapskate, so I just use a carrier bag. But you want to go over the entire surface of the helmet with the glazing putty. Stay away from any really super detailed areas that you can't get into with some sandpaper, because it's just going to make your job a lot harder later down the line. But yeah, basically go over the whole helmet with a tube of this, leave that for 24 hours, and then come back to it. Now, if you are wondering about the detail areas of this particular helmet, the Sith Trooper, that has hundreds of grooves all over it, and asking, do you fill those in? Do you, like, what do you do? So I initially didn't. I just tried to fill in the printer lines with the filler primer. Wasn't good enough, so I did actually go over it with the glazing putty, and once it dried, sanded it off, but obviously it had filled in all the grooves, so I literally went through every single groove with a nail to scrape all that out to retain the peaks and troughs of the grooves. And I did that every time, every layer, every time I filler primed it, every time I put another coat of glazing putty. I spent hours and hours you know, just scraping it out with a nail. I really wish I had the footage to show how enjoyable it was. Then what you want to do is start sanding. So I go over the first layer with a mouse, just to save time and energy. I use like 120 grit sandpaper. Don't go any coarser than that, because you want to keep, you know, the putty actually on, but you just want to get rid of the high bits and the messy bits. It'll make sense as you do it, but once you've gone over it with that, do it by hand to get into all the you know, the more difficult areas that you can't get into with a mouse sander. And yeah, just do this carefully and logically, so you don't, you know, otherwise this whole process is just pointless. Then you go over again with more filler primer. As I said, I've lost the footage, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself here. I'm a bad filmmaker. Do apologize. But yeah, filler primer, spot and glazing putty or stopper, sand it all down, filler primer again, and then just keep using those two methods. If after this step you need to fill it again, go for it. Once you're happy with the finish, then move down to finer grade sandpapers. I then go in like a 240 and then I go to 400, so it's nice and smooth. You can see here I've already painted it red, and I've actually moved to this next step of masking it for the black parts. I just used frog tape and an X-Acto knife here. It is quite time consuming, but you know, it's going to be worth it. So there you go, I've sprayed it black. I'm going to leave that for 24 hours to dry and then remove the tape and see what it looks like. Okay, the thing that went wrong, number 38, what happened is when I removed the tape, because I'd used a high gloss red finish spray paint, it had loads of residue from the frog tape and like lines, and it just completely ruined my paint job. So I went ahead and started sanding it. I didn't film any of this because I was so annoyed with myself. So this is me kind of, you know, ranting at the camera at the time, going, look how bad my helmet looks. I got the black on, I got the red on, but it looks terrible. So I just started to sand down the paint, which is much harder than sanding down you know, your stopper and your filler primer, because it's paint. It's sort of plasticky, it wants to be on there. So it was an absolute nightmare. So I went over it with the mouse, with hand sanders, and then finally got down to a sort of finer grade, as good as I could get it, basically, to just repaint it again. But then of course I had to mask off the black areas. So I've done that. This is as smooth as I can get it, and I'm gonna repaint it red, and for any other masking areas I'm going to use a different sort of painter's tape, which I did. I moved to this yellow stuff, which is you know, the low tack. You still get a really good straight line, but it doesn't leave residue. It's much better, much better. You know, I did leave the paint to dry for over 24 hours, by the way. I didn't just rush through it. It's just the, you know, the nature of the tape. Okay, so next, once you've got your helmet painted, it's time to move on to the visor. I wanted to experiment here. With my last helmet I used Perspex. With this one I wanted something easier, cheaper, and, you know, just generally easier to work with. So I used one of those, you know, big Tupperware boxes that cost me like, you know, £3. And I'm just cutting it out here, cutting out a flat piece. This also didn't go well because it shatters. It's really hard to just, you know, completely trash this box just to get a usable piece out of it, but we're gonna fire ahead. So I then used a piece of paper to mark the shape of the visor, and then I laid the plastic on top and drew around larger than this, so I have an area to, you know, glue. And the reason I wanted to try this is because it's super flexible. I don't have to use a heat gun to like mold it into shape and all this stuff, and it's cheap. So that was my thinking. I then used some tinted window film. Top tip here, if it says like, you know, 70% tinted, that doesn't mean it's 70% dark. It means it, you know, that's 70% lighting. If it says like 5% tinted, it means it lets 5% light in, so it's darker. Don't get it the wrong way around. Another top tip: use some rubber gloves to separate, you know, to find the edge, so you can peel off the backing and get the sticky there. Otherwise, it takes like 15 years. There we go. I found it. So then just lay it over your lens and use the squidgy thing to you know, iron out any bubbles as much as you can. Then I did go over it with a heat gun just to you know, stretch it out over itself a bit more, and then I'll trim the edges, and time to put it in the helmet. So I've just used a clip here, and what I'm also doing is using the heat gun very gently, just to sort of shape that piece. So because obviously it's quite springy, it wants to spring out, so when I come to glue it, it's going to want to, you know, get away from itself. So all I'm doing here is just really gently using the heat gun to shape it. Just be careful, because obviously PLA melts really easily. That's how we can print with it. It has a low burning melting point. So just be really gentle. Don't stay over it for longer than 10 seconds with the heat gun, because otherwise you're going to melt your model and you're going to be really upset. So as you can see here, when I unclip it, it keeps its shape. That's just going to help us glue it in, and for it to stay in there for the, you know, the length of its life, basically. So there it is. I used just regular hot glue here. I don't like hot glue because it sets really quickly, so you don't have a lot of work time. It also, you know, you get big blotches here. You can see it down the edges of the helmet. I just don't like hot glue. It works, but you know, probably something better in the future. But the helmet is taking shape. You can also see that the way this is printed is in separate parts, purely for painting. So you can paint all the red parts, you can paint all the black parts, and then piece it together. So you don't have to do all that annoying masking of really tiny little detailed areas. You just paint them all separately and then build it together like Lego. You know, it's brilliant. So I'm just using hot glue again here for the red cheeks. And it's starting to take shape. It's starting to look like a Sith Trooper helmet. All these things that went wrong, finally paying off. And I'm just gluing the black cheek components in here, same again with hot glue. The very last bits, and there we go. It's ready. However, I went one step further with this helmet. Because it looks so nice and, you know, posh on the outside, I wanted to make it posh on the inside. So I used this just this black felt to line the helmet, so it almost looks like you've bought it from a shop, you know, as well as it's a lot more, you know, it's a lot more comfortable. So that's what I did. I just cut it up and used hot glue.
Shut up and sit down.
There you go. What can I say? I hope you enjoyed this video. I really do apologize for like how much went wrong and how much cobbled together it is. And I hope I accurately portrayed the pain and suffering that I went through to make this helmet. If you would also like some pain and suffering, or just this helmet, you can now, my website is now launched. Jeddah Workshop is officially launched, so you can buy the printed parts of this helmet to make it yourself, or if you own a printer yourself, you can also buy the files and just do it all from scratch. Yeah, I guess that's it. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much to my new subscribers and everyone that's commented and liked and stuff. It's awesome. I'm also on Instagram now at Jedi Workshop, and I'm also on Facebook at Jedi Workshop. There you go. Happy days. Bye.
Doesn't sound so bad to me.